Yo, welcome back. This is Mr. Baumgarten, and we are programming our platformer game in JavaScript. Every video that we make, we get closer to our end goal, and our project looks more and more like a game. Today, we're going to make this thing scroll and move across our platform world like a real game should. Now, at the moment, in the web browser so far, we've just been using it full screen like this. However, the end goal for our game is to run on a phone. So let's get our preview mode working for a phone. And to do that, I'm going to right click on my web browser and go back to the inspect menu that we had before to look at the console logs and things like that. And there's this little icon here that should be the second one from the left across the top, toggle device toolbar. And when I click that, we actually get to pick a phone screen that we want to simulate, and it'll resize everything accordingly. I might just make it a little bigger now, but you notice at the moment, okay, so it's only showing, filling up the top quarter or so of this quote-unquote phone screen. But if I do a Control R to refresh, reload, you can see that that automatically fills it up. All right, so this is what it would look like on an iPhone 12 Pro at the moment. So it doesn't really matter which phone you choose. If your exact phone isn't here, then that's okay. As long as you've got it, so that we've got it in portrait mode to simulate a phone screen, then the rest will kind of just flow through automatically. All right, so now at the moment, when I move my player along, okay, it falls off the edge of the screen rather than the world moving with our player. And so we're actually going to do a little bit of a sleight of hand here, and our sprite character is going to mostly stay in the same place, and we're going to scroll the background instead. And so what we need to do, so here's my drawing of my game world, and you've got your drawing of your game world. So what we want is so that when the game starts, right, this is the section that is visible in our phone screen, and then as we move maybe to the right, oops, wrong character, okay, that window kind of slides along, and so the portion of the game world that we are seeing is what moves around rather than necessarily the sprite, and our sprite just kind of stays in the center of this the whole time. And so, so that's what I want to get up and running today. I want to get this sliding window effect happening, where it's the background that moves rather than our sprite character. All right, so how are we going to do that? Let's pop over into our Visual Studio Code. And so the first thing I'm going to do is drawing of the player. Instead of using player X and player Y, I'm going to change that to be because when we hit the keys, we're not really wanting to move the player as such. We're wanting to move the window around. I'm just thinking this through. Yeah, so the player X and Y can stay in the same place. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another couple of variables up the top here. All right, so offset X and offset Y, what I'm going to think of these variables as being in my head All right, so offset, if offset X and Y are 0, 0, then it's the top left corner that is being displayed on my phone. And then as offset X increases, then the portion that's visible on my phone is going to move to the right. And as offset Y increases, the portion that's visible on my phone is going to move down. Now, I'm also, rather than using pixel numbers, I'm thinking I'm going to use grid block numbers. All right, which means I'm probably long overdue for creating a variable. I might even make it a constant. A constant is just a thing that you can treat like a variable, but you can't change the value. As in, you can't add or multiply or subtract numbers from it later on in your code. Once you set it, it's fixed. Pixels per block. Oh, which I created up here, and is there set to 24. Okay, so that's what I want. I almost forget what I've done. Okay, let's turn that into a constant and set that to 24. And then all of this other stuff where I was using 24, I could almost just replace them all with and it just makes my code even easier to maintain, because there's only one place that I have to change everything if I want to change my grid size. There we go. Okay, so that was long overdue little tidy up. Okay, so I've got my offset X and I've got my offset Y, and that's what I want to change when I use my mouse or my keyboard. So I'm going to change these lines of code. So instead of changing where the player character is drawn, I'm going to change the offset windows. Right, so let's figure out what I want to do for that. And so yeah, I'll just put in here offset X is equal to offset X minus 1, because we want to move one grid. So it means we're going to be moving 24 pixels at a time. And so we can change that our grid size later on. So just change your keyboard and mouse controls from being player to being offset. So that's the keyboard, and I'll do the same for the mouse here. Right, but I'm going to keep the sprite being drawn at player X and Y. So that's just, although I'm actually tempted to maybe just rename these as well, just so it doesn't confuse us. And make us think that player X and Y is what we should be changing. So I'm going to call these sprite X and sprite Y. So they're the X and Y location for where the sprite will be drawn, and then I'll just rename them up the top here as well, just to make it clear that we know what we're changing when we're doing these things. But these are, well, they're currently pixels. We might change them to block numbers later on. In fact, we probably will. All right. So now, if I save and go back to my game, the keyboard and mouse does nothing because the sprite is fixed at 100, 100. We'll move the sprite later on. Right now, let's just get the background window scrolling. So let's come back to our game. Right. And so the way we're going to need to do this is we need to update. Let's close this sidebar. We need to update this code here because this is determining what gets drawn at what location on the screen. And so we want to take those offset calculations into account. And so the first thing I might do is, because all these calculations are exactly the same. So let's just put them into a couple of variables that we create here inside the loop, so that we only need to do these changes to these calculations once. So let's create an x, right, which is this thing. And a y, which is this thing. So now I need to only do the calculation once, and I won't need to copy and paste it across to all these other lines where I could make a mistake and typo or insert a bug or something like that. You could say that programmers are lazy, but we like to say we're being pragmatic by making it so that we only do if we can get away with only doing a calculation once and then just reusing the result each time, then that makes for much safer programming. Okay, so this thing calculates, this is the column number that I'm drawing and the grid size. So the column number is what I'm wanting to change, because if I am saying that let's come back to where's my little sketch. So let's hypothesize that I'm wanting to draw this part onto my phone. And so I might have a Y value of about, 2, because I'm not very far down from the top left corner. But I might have an X value of, let's say 15. Okay, so that means that the top corner here needs to be Y2 and X15. So I need to subtract. I'm pretty sure it's subtraction, because I want to move. Because when column is 0, and I'm wanting to draw 15. All right, when this thing says 15, I want the 15th grid. I want this to be the 15th grid. Let's double check this. Okay. Yeah, sometimes if you're not quite sure how to pitch and do it in your head, it helps if you draw it out on paper. And you could always go into your code to test it. All right, so at the moment, what happens if I press D to move right? Yes, I've got that happening right. There we go. So my game is moving to the right every time I hit the letter D. Let's move down. So I'm pressing S. There should be some more of the world here to see. Let's just reload this. Okay, move down. Move to... I see what's going on. It's only drawing... it's only... The only part of the world that's getting rendered is the part that was in the initial window. Interesting. Okay, let's debug this and figure out what's going on. Let me think. Okay, so it's just occurred to me what was going on here. So I was only drawing the initial width and height because my loops here, I was saying to only use the row number up to however many blocks I've got on the height of the screen and how many blocks are on the width of the screen. But when I'm using this offset, yeah, so rather than changing that, I wanted to go from whatever row number my offset is, and while the row is less than whatever that was, plus the offset. All right, so go from whatever row we want drawn at the top left corner until we hit from that starting position plus the height as the bottom row. And then the same here, whatever column we want as the top left corner, and then keep going while column is within the range of the width of the screen. Let's go back across, refresh, and oh, that's interesting. Okay, yeah. Because of this, I'm still doing these. So this row number is still going to be like 10, and then I'm timesing that by the pixels per block. So that's not what I want. That still needs to go 0, 0. Unless I just minus the offset. Oops, that's the X one. That's better. Look at that. There we go. Fixed. Okay. Okay, but it crashes if I try to go past the edge of the... So I'm trying to get it... So I went down and tried to draw below what was inside my game world. And so like here, if I go off the right-hand edge of the game world, it'll also crash. No. But it crashes if I go down. Interesting. Undefined reading 149. Yeah, okay, yeah, it did eventually crash. It just didn't do it straight away. So if x is greater than 0 and x is less than window no, that's not the problem, is it? It's if my row and column exceed what's inside level. Okay, So if row is greater than 0 and row is less than level length and column is greater than or equal to 0, I need an equal to's there, and column is less than the level for this row, its length, and move all these if statements inside that. So I'll just cut that, paste it down here, and then fix up my indentation. I think that'll fix it. So if I go down, yeah, okay, see, so it doesn't crash anymore. It just it just draws nothingness. And if I go up, yeah, same deal. All right, so that has fixed that. Let's just clear those so that yeah. Okay, so that's fixed. There we go. We've basically got our scrolling platformer. We now need to put our sprite in a better location because we probably want the sprite down here, I think. So I'm going to think about this in terms of blocks for the sprite. Pixels per block. All right, so we worked out. Do we know exactly how many blocks there are on my screen? It'll be all right, so we have 35.1 blocks high. So yeah, so we can kind of just see 0.1 of a block down the bottom there, and we are 16 blocks across. So I'm going to go for about the halfway. So 8 blocks in to draw the sprite, and about 30. So if we do 8 times pixels per block and about 20 times pixels per block. So that should be standing on a block at the moment, and the 8's too many. I'm going to come back. We've got to, actually, I realize what's going on there. Okay, so let's fix up our sprite. The issue with our sprite character at the moment is that that pixel coordinate is the top left corner of the sprite. And I probably want to think of the sprite as what sprite, the position that it's standing on, rather than its top left corner. Because, you know, when I'm testing if I'm standing on a platform, I don't want to be just, you know, is the top left corner touching a platform. I want to test are the feet on a platform. All right, this is a bit of a change, so we'll fix up the sprite stuff in the next video.